Welcome everyone to the 2023 NFL mock draft season here at Blogging the Boys. I am Brandon Loree. I will be sort of your host, your quarterback for these little shorts between now and the draft that we're going to be putting out on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. And with the draft just being less than 3 weeks away, which is pretty crazy to think about, we will be doing some mock drafts with some of the personalities side by side with me from Blogging the Boys, fellow writers. And there's nobody better that I want to start off with than my compadre, my confidant, and that is David Howman, who you can follow on Twitter at underscore DH44 underscore. Dave, I'm so happy that you're here. I'm so happy that you get to be number one. How does that feel for you to be the first one doing this with me?
It feels really, really special, especially since, as you can see, I've got Jerry Jones back here behind me. He's ready to put in the call and get the players that we're getting. So it's game time. Let's go.
And I do appreciate your takes with the draft and everything, and we'll get to it as we talk about this a little bit before we get to our mock. But the one thing I do enjoy is reading, your reports, the profiles that you do on a lot of the players coming into the draft. And with that, I want to know, like, what are your top 3 positions of need for the Cowboys? And they set themselves up really well in free agency. So what do you think are the glaring holes that they need to fill as a priority, within this next NFL draft?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I think they've set themselves up really well. Getting Stephon Gilmore and Brandon Cooks have really helped shore up some of those bigger positions of need at corner and receiver. So it's kind of a Rorschach test right now of their positions of need, where you're going to get a different answer from everybody. For me, I would prefer to prioritize the tight end position. I know I've been banging the drum on the tight end position and its overall value in the league today. I like Jake Ferguson. I like Peyton Hendershot. Like both of those guys plenty. But I think with the talent that's in the tight end class this year, you can get a real difference maker at that position. I think interior offensive line, specifically that left guard position, especially if the team is set on Tyler Smith being their left tackle going forward, that's something that you need to address. You need to have a starter at left guard if it won't be Tyler Smith. And then I think defensively, I think corner is still a position of need just because Gilmore is here for this year, but then after that, he's going to be a free agent. So I think there's still some sense in investing in that position.
And then what would be maybe something that a lot of fans aren't really thinking about? Could it be maybe a safety? Like that's one thing I'm thinking about where you have Jaron Kearse that's on, the last year of his deal. Malik Hooker is on the last year of his deal. And then behind them, we do have Donovan Wilson, or the Cowboys do now. But is that like sort of just like a, not a, it's like a hidden position of need for the Cowboys?
I honestly, I would be kind of surprised if they did go safety, just because they re-signed Donovan Wilson. They've got Kearse and Hooker. They've got Israel Mukuamu and they have Marquise Bell. So I feel like they're probably good at safety, but they could always throw a fast one and keep us all surprised. I would say probably the biggest area for surprise that people aren't talking as much about is defensive tackle. They re-signed Jonathan Hankins, but it's to a 1-year deal. They've got Neville Gallimore, who hasn't quite lived up to the hype yet. Osa Odigizua, he kind of is in a rotational role right now, even though he's played well. So I think that could potentially be a spot where they try to get a playmaker if somebody ends up being available in those first few rounds.
So we see that you are best buddies with the owner, Jerry Jones. You got the invitation onto the yacht. Does that mean that he has an insight into what your draft philosophy is? Like what shapes how you want to handle the draft for the 2023 Cowboys?
Yeah, I mean, my draft philosophy primarily starts with just letting the draft come to you. I've never been a big fan of spending a bunch of picks to try and trade up, unless you're in a position where you're needing to go up and try to get one of the quarterbacks. But thankfully, the Cowboys aren't in that position. Just let it play out, let the board present itself to you, and then from there, for me, I really want to just focus on the most valuable positions in those early rounds. So I'm not a fan of going after a running back, even if it's Bijan Robinson, who is far and away the best running back. in this draft and has been for the last few years, it's just not a very valuable position. I want to prioritize things like corners that can defend against the pass, receivers or tight ends that can elevate your passing game, and then relative to pass protection. If you have offensive linemen, that's kind of a case by case basis on what they actually present to you, but things that are going to tie into your pass game is primarily what I'm looking at.
Well, you brought up a great point at the start where you're not a big fan of giving up draft capital for trades or anything. And that's what we're going to do. We're not going to do any trades here. We're going to keep it super simple. And we're actually only going to take the first 5 rounds of the Cowboys draft picks, which sets up perfectly because they have a pick in each round, which is also very strange because they usually have multiple. But for this time around, they just have picks, 1 through 7 in all the 7 rounds. But we're just going to stick through 1 through 5 this time around. So with that being said, we got the mock draft basically queued up via PFF, and we're going to go through and just see, like you said, basically what happens. How does that sound?
Sounds great. Let's do it.
All right. So let's see. And we got it in turbo mode. So this way it just flies through.
Picks are flying.
Oh, yeah. So it looks like right now on the board, we do have Brian Branch, the safety out of Alabama, Brian Brisset, the defensive tackle from Clemson, Will McDonald is somebody, Michael Mayer, Emmanuel Forbes. What position do you want to highlight as something that kind of sticks out for you right now?
I mean, I want to look at who all is left at the tight end spot.
Okay.
I'm a big believer in there. So yeah,
So let's see. Yeah.
Okay.
We got Michael Mayer, Sam Laporta, Luke Musgrave, Darnell Washington. I think those 4, yeah, all good picks. And I think you could argue, besides the Dalton Kincaid, me personally, I have Dalton Kincaid as my number 1, tight end in the class. But those are still really good 4 tight ends. I would say Sam Laporta might be a little bit behind the other 2. I'm a big fan of Luke Musgrave, but it's up to you. Whatever you want to go with. I think these are also very, really good, solid names.
Yeah, I mean, I think they are all really good names. I'm a big Laporta fan, so I think if you're looking at these 4 guys and saying who were the Cowboys going to take, I think they would probably lean towards Luke Musgrave just because his athleticism really fits into what Mike McCarthy likes, what he likes in his offense. Personally, between these 4, I'm going Sam Laporta. I think, just with the pedigree coming from Iowa, he's a demon after the catch. He's got very soft hands. I really like Sam Laporta.
So is that the pick? We're turning in the car for Sam Laporta?
Yeah, Jerry's on the phone right now calling it in.
Awesome. All right. So at 26, we got Sam Laporta again, flying through right now. You see like a previous picks to the Giants. You have Keon White out of Georgia Tech. Trenton Simpson, the linebacker, was taken at pick 52 by the Seattle Seahawks. That's somebody that the Cowboys have shown some interest in. Luke Musgrave goes to Kellen Moore's offense at pick number 54. And then Steve Avila. And actually, that's how it's pronounced. I figured out it's not Avila, it's Avila. So he goes to Miami at pick number 51. And that's somebody that I think the Cowboys would have loved to fall to their second round pick. But what's the next position that you want to kind of highlight?
I at this point, I'm probably looking at what's available about both receiver and corner and just kind of measuring how much I like those guys.
Okay, so let's see. We got receiver and cornerback. So we do have Nathaniel Dell, a.k.a. Tank Dell, which is the best nickname ever for a guy his size. We also have Tyreek Stevenson. That's another name that the Cowboys have recently shown interest in as well. Garrett Williams, cornerback from Syracuse. Travius Hodgins-Tomlinson, Michael Wilson, DJ Turner, corner from Michigan. That's another guy who tested very well. You have, of course, Rashee Rice, A.T. Perry. Any of the names kind of stick out for you?
Yeah, man, it's tough. Like right now in my head, I'm going between Tank Dell and Rashee Rice, and I think, I mean, Rice has been one of my guys early on. I think he's so smooth, he's so fun to watch, and unlike Tank Dell, he's kind of fits into those more traditional size profiles that you look for in a receiver. So I think I would probably at this point go Rice, even though even though PFF considers Dell to be a much better prospect, and I think he may be just in a vacuum, but I think for what the Cowboys do on offense, for what Rice offers, I think he's just a better fit.
Well, and I also know that Dak Prescott and Rice were working out, I believe, last year in the offseason, and that caught a lot of attention on Instagram. But would you also say that Rice presents a little bit more on the outside as opposed to Dell, who's a little bit as a smaller receiver? Like the Cowboys need that sort of
Right.
outside big body presence.
Yeah, and I think I think there will be some teams that will look at Dell and say we can make him work on the outside, but for the most part, especially with his size, a lot of teams are going to project him as a slot only guy. And with the Cowboys right now, a lot of it should be keep CeeDee Lamb in the slot because he's just on another level when he's in the slot. So with Rashee Rice, he's a much better fit on the outside.
Okay, so that's the pick that we're going with the second round.
Let's do it.
All right, we got Rashee Rice, wide receiver from SMU, and I think that you could say that the wide receiver room for the Cowboys right now is pretty solidified. You have CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup, Rashee Rice, and then whatever you can get from Jalen Tolbert, which I do think that he will have a better second season. And then you have Kevontae Turpin as well, who can hopefully develop as a more gadget guy. Cowboys are pretty loaded at wide receiver right now.
Yeah, and that's a good spot to have a lot of players that you can hopefully rely on and a lot of talent there.
So looking at where we stand right now, I feel like that the Giants picking in front of the Cowboys are going to be a thorn in their side throughout the entire draft.
Yeah.
And it's the same way at the third round for me, where you have Dorian Williams going from Tulane, the linebacker. That's a guy who I really liked at this spot for the Cowboys if that happened. Darius Rush, the cornerback from South Carolina, he went at 86 to the Baltimore Ravens. Tajay Spears, the running back from Tulane, another Tulane guy, went to the Miami Dolphins. And then Jaquelin Roy, a defensive tackle that the Cowboys have recently shown a lot of interest in. Reportedly, Jerry Jones also met with him as well. He goes to pick 82 at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So a lot of guys are off the board right now. Looking at the 30 visit list for what we have, there might be a few names on there. Are you thinking running back? Because I do think the Cowboys will address it at some point. I'm not trying to, tip your hand here or think about or persuade you in any way, but what position do you think the Cowboys should address next?
I mean, I would still hold off on running back just because I think, especially in this draft, there's a lot of guys that offer a lot of production that you can get well past round 3. So, I mean, at this point, I'm curious what's left at the interior offensive line, and then also corner is still something that intrigues me as a potential spot to go.
Okay, so let's see. Wow. Okay, so we still have Garrett Williams out of Syracuse, Travius Hodgins Tomlinson, who I believe is related to LaDainian Tomlinson in some fashion. I believe a nephew.
That's right.
Chandler Zavala. Again, I get a lot of buzz around his name
Mhm.
recently. DallasCowboys.com draft show was talking about him a lot. Aisha Morrison, Corey Trice. That's a guy. John Owning. He of course a PFF guy himself. Has been talking up a lot and seems like his tape is pretty good. Let's see. Juice
Mhm.
Scruggs. That's another guy that the Cowboys have shown interest in. Riley Moss, Eli Ricks. Voorhees, the guard, he unfortunately tore his ACL, but
Mhm.
showed a lot of strength doing the bench press still. Anybody, Jacorian Bennett, that's another one. Michigan center. Now, do you want to see if there's any tackles still available that might be, maybe like they can kick inside if they have any inside
Yeah,
flex or
yeah, that's a good thing to look at.
okay. Let's see.
Sometimes there's guys that are just more natural fits inside.
I don't know much about Morris from Oklahoma.
Yeah,
I mean, it seems like it's pretty set up the same way.
yeah.
Tackle from Old Dominion.
I mean, I'm ready to pull the trigger on Eli Ricks.
Yeah.
He's another one of my guys that I think personally I have a second round grade on him.
Oh, okay.
I think he was really really good at Alabama. I'm surprised to see him still available. He he's kind of an interesting story because he started at LSU, transferred to Alabama, and then didn't start right away. But when he got on the field, he looked really impressive. So I think, I mean, the Cowboys know very well with Trayvon Diggs when you get corners from Alabama, they're going to come in with with a pretty high floor, and I think Ricks is a good addition.
Well, and I think two arguments to be made with when you bring up Trayvon Diggs. I want to ask you, one, how does he compare to Diggs kind of coming out of school? And two, it's a good pick because I do think that depending on what happens with the Cowboys and the contract negotiations for Trayvon Diggs, they're going to need somebody to kind of step up, if the other guys like a Kelvin Joseph and the Sean Wright don't develop. So I think it's a quality pick.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think with Ricks, he's one of those guys that he hasn't played a whole lot, so it's just kind of sample size issues there. But he has flashes where he looks like he has a very high ceiling. He could potentially become a really really great player, which was honestly kind of similar with Trayvon when he was coming out. A lot of people thought he was going to be a first round talent, and then he was kind of uneven here and there, and then found his footing in Dallas.
Okay, so we turned in the card for Eli Ricks, cornerback out of Alabama. Again, the Giants just seem like they are just a pain. They draft Kendre Miller, running back from TCU, a guy that, again, the Cowboys have shown a lot of interest in going and seeing if anybody else. Roshan Johnson, running back, goes to Baltimore. That's another guy. Cowboys have Jair Brown. That's a safety prospect that I have, really enjoyed watching. Sort of like a Donovan Wilson type, but like you mentioned, if they didn't re-sign Wilson, I think that would have been a name the Cowboys would have looked at a little bit more. But the fact that they have him already, it's kind of a wash. Noah Sewell, Penny Sewell's brother, linebacker from Oregon, he goes to Washington. A couple guys. Jonathan Mingo again, wide receiver. So where do you want to go now? We addressed the tight end position, wide receiver, corner. Is it offensive or is it defensive line? See what we have there versus running back, maybe those two positions.
Yeah, with running back, if Roshan Johnson were still here, that would probably be my pick. I really like Roshan Johnson, especially as a complementary back with Tony Pollard. But I see Kobe Turner from Wake Forest right there, and he's a guy I'm really high on. I just finished up my player profile on him. I don't know if it's actually gone up yet or not, but if it hasn't, it's coming soon. Big fan of Kobe Turner. He is an elite run defender. He's got a lot of juice as a pass rusher too. I think getting him in now and kind of letting him learn from Jonathan Hankins would be a really incredible deal because he has a lot of Hankins style to his play. So, I mean, I hate to just go impulsive and not even look at who else is there, but at the same time, I think you see Kobe Turner, his rank is 87 and it's 129. To me, that's incredible value at a position that, if you're thinking more long term, which in the fourth round, that's what you're generally doing. To me, that's a great pick.
So he's not a Charles Tapper, right? Like not the fourth round Charles Tapper.
I mean, maybe he will end up being one, but
Okay. Well, I trust your opinion. We'll turn in the card for Turner.
Yeah, I would be shocked if he turned out being Charles Tapper 2.0.
Okay. So we have the final pick here, 169. We addressed defensive tackle, like defensive line, corner, wide receiver, tight end. Is it maybe a developmental quarterback? Again, is it going to be the running back? Do you want to see who's available? I know you've been pushing against it a little bit. And listen, Tony Pollard is going to be here. Maybe they work out a long-term deal. But I do think that with the way the draft is set up, taking a running back, I think maybe as many teams as possible are going to try and do that. And I can definitely see the Cowboys being one of those teams.
Yeah, I mean, I want to take a look at the running backs available. I also see Corey Trice is still there, which is very tempting.
All right. Well, we'll keep that in the back of our minds.
Yeah, I'll keep an open mind here.
Okay. Keaton Mitchell, East Carolina, good player. Mo Ibrahim, I saw up close and personal. I covered Rutgers football last season, and he torched them for, I believe, over 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he's a very good player. A little on the older side, dealt with injuries, but he was at the East-West Shrine game, and I believe he won the award for Practice Player of the Week for whatever squad he was on. So a very, very good, quality guy to have in your locker room.
I call him Mini Zeke. He reminds me of Zeke in a lot of ways.
Well, and Mike McCarthy talked about how he wants to have a big body back to sort of complement what they have in Tony Pollard. So he would definitely fit that mold. Let's see. Running back out of Utah, Travis Dye. Not really much kind of left here. Do you want to take a look at another position?
Yeah, let's look at offensive line, both tackle and guard.
Okay. And again, that lines up pretty good because of the fact that the Cowboys, you don't know what's going to happen next year with Terrence Steele. I mean, he hasn't even signed his second round tender yet, so you hope he's going to be good and around for a long time with contract negotiations. But if Tyron Smith retires next year, you lose out on Terrence Steele. It is something that you're going to have to address, especially with Josh Ball being sort of an uncertainty. Um, you have Jordan McFadden, who I've been hearing a lot of things about him kicking inside more towards being a guard, little T-Rex arm situation there. Antonio Mafi, that's a name that has been, thrown around a lot more as well. He played defensive tackle, ironically, next to Oso Odigizua in college.
Yep.
So that's something that I found very intriguing. You also have Anthony Bradford, guard at LSU.
Yeah, I was mostly looking to see if Mafi was still there because that's
Oh,
that's
okay.
another one of my guys. Um, and like you said, yeah, he started defensive tackle. They moved him to guard. He's played a couple different positions, but he found a home at left guard. And I mean, when I watch Antonio Mafi, I look at him, I see Tyler Smith 2.0. Just he's a big dude. He's incredibly physical. He's not quite the athlete like when Tyler Smith goes and pulls and he moves so much more than you would expect for a guy his size. Mafi's not quite there, but if he's playing guard, which is where he's the best fit, I mean, the idea of him next to Tyler Smith for 10 years, 10, 15 years, to me, I think that's a really great idea. So I mean, I want to go Mafi here.
Okay, I like it. And how does he compare to someone like a Ronald Leary when he was with the Cowboys?
um, I mean, that's kind of, to me that's like an unfair comparison for him just coming out,
Yeah.
especially because he doesn't have a ton of reps to his name just yet, but I think it's kind of similar in terms of a guy that isn't going to be a highly drafted guy, but has a lot of potential and specifically in terms of fitting into this offense and this offensive line, I think is just a really seamless fit and has a ton of room to grow and become a really productive blocker. So I'm a big Mafi fan.
All right, so let's see how you grade it out. Again, grades aren't always the end all be all, but it looks like based off of how we drafted, we got a C minus overall. But again, it's not the entire draft. I know the Cowboys find great value in the later rounds of the draft, but I do think, like you mentioned, getting someone like a Kobe Turner in the fourth round, clearly, a lot of people agree with that. But he's a quality player. You addressed a lot of needs here. Again, running back, the Cowboys did sign back Rico Dowdle. They do have Malik Davis to go along with Tony Pollard, and they also have, Ronald Jones as somebody that they kind of protected themselves with to be that big body guy that they brought in free agency. And you never know what happens if, people get cut on that final cut down day. You might find a couple players that slip through the cracks, and you never know what happens with undrafted free agency as well.
Right. And they have Ronald Jones, who has been around for a while and was, a few years ago when he was coming out of the draft, people thought that he could be one of the next big running back names too. And hasn't quite turned out that way, but I think he's still got a lot left in the tank. So I think running back wise, they're probably in good shape. Plus, as we were just talking about Mo Ibrahim, very good running back that might even be available there in the sixth round. So I think they're probably good at that spot. But as far as the grades, everyone's a critic. I'm not worried about it. Everyone hated the Micah Parsons and Tyler Smith picks. So, yeah, we're not worried.
So your final thoughts, any sort of picks that are your highlight, something that you're very proud on that you want to hang your hat on. Sam Laporta in the first. Not a lot of people seem to be, on board with that thing that he's more of a second, third round pick. But if the Cowboys are picking late in the first round and he's going to go in the second, I'm all for getting him in the first if that's a player that you truly believe in, and you get that fifth year option, which is something the team covets a lot.
Yeah, and I think it's also just that's kind of that comes with the territory of picking in the late half of the first round, like the Cowboys are this year, like they were last year. When again they took Tyler Smith, who a lot of people didn't think was worthy of a first round pick, but they were saying, well, he's not going to be available in the second round for us. We really like what he brings to the table. and taking him in the first round, you get that 5th-year option, which teams really value. So I think it's kind of a similar deal where most likely whoever the Cowboys do take, unless it ends up being a CeeDee Lamb situation where some great player falls to them, there's going to be some criticism, and there's going to be some corner of the internet that says this guy wasn't worthy of a first-round pick. But it's just kind of that's the deal you get when you pick in this range. With Sam Laporta, if they were to get him, he's coming in and he's immediately upgrading your pass catching weaponry. He's immediately going to be a great threat for Dak Prescott to throw to, especially with the way that Mike McCarthy is running this offense. I really liked the Kobe Turner pick, though. I think he was, especially at the spot that we just got him at, is great value. I think that being able to learn from Jonathan Hankins is great for him as well. And then that's a guy that you've got long term that can be just plugging that hole in the middle for your run defense going forward.
Well, you're definitely going to be a tough act to follow for anybody who comes on after you. But where can the people follow you on social media to check out all the reports that you put out and everything that you do at Blogging the Boys?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at _DH44_. And I put all my written word content out there, which you can also find on bloggingtheboys.com, and going through a lot of player evaluations for this draft right now, and then other football related thoughts, specifically with the Cowboys, but sometimes I'll comment on other teams as it comes. Really, really excited for draft season to continue and for the draft to actually get.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us for the first Blogging the Boys mock draft of the 2023 NFL draft season. Be sure to read all the work at bloggingtheboys.com and rate and review all the podcasts that we have at the Blogging the Boys podcast network. I am Brandon Loree for David Howman. As always, until next time, go Cowboys.